Welcome, everyone, to the Lakers Nightcap on 3/29/2024. Lakers played the Indiana Pacers tonight. Unfortunately, lost 109-90. And have had somewhat of some success so far the first half of this six-game road trip. The next three games are going to be an interesting one. Really, really bad teams. Another back-to-back, but a really bad team. Really bad teams, I should say. The original good record that we had picked, at least I did, was 4-2. But right now, should the Lakers play to their capabilities, I'd like to think they could probably finish this off 5-1, which would be a huge win. What's up, Henry? How you doing, buddy? Tonight was somewhat predictable with the results, or this evening, I should say, for some of us. I just didn't think that the Indiana Pacers were going to play as bad as they did initially. I didn't think they were going to play lackluster on offense, being as good as they are on offense. The Lakers couldn't take advantage. I was hoping they could get some kind of a lead, like 5, 6, 7-point lead in the first half to kind of carry that into the end when they really, really got tired. Because you could tell they were getting tired. They were front rimming almost every shot. D'Angelo didn't look like he could move. Austin was getting rebounds and trying to initiate the offense, but he couldn't shoot either. So it just was one of those nights. And LeBron looked like he was kind of stuck in mud a little bit. AD was giving his usual effort, but it looked like he didn't have enough there. And of course, the bench didn't do anything tonight. Had they had the performances they had the last couple nights, they might have had a chance to do some things. Salute, NBA. Thank you for being here, brother. I've been seeing some new names here. So for those of you who are new here for the post games, the Lakers Fast Break, as well as the Nightcap, please like and subscribe. We are almost to 1,500. We had just passed the threshold of 1,490. So thank you again for being our loyal followers. And those of you who have just arrived, please like and subscribe. More content will be coming, more excitement, more production value, again, is going to be up there, or up here, I should say. And we'll be, doing our thing, regardless if the Lakers are playing deep in the playoffs or not. Yeah, Henry, I'm starting to see the Cam Reddish experiment really hit the skids now. I don't know if he's going to recover. His body looks like it's turning into mush. So Darvin Ham's going to have to make a decision here in whether he's going to be able to use this guy. I know Gabe Vincent's coming. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's not going to be an experiment that's going to go well, especially for someone who hasn't really played all year. His stamina is not going to be there, and I just don't see any chemistry building from there. If it happens to be a miracle where he helps, thank God, but I just don't see it. And I'd like to welcome, it's been a while, Mr. Magic Man, Sean Grice. What up, Sean? I love the shirt, like the clock. Tonight's game, or this evening's game, depending on where you're at, was lackluster, if you will. And I'm going to just kind of brush this off for now because I think the Lakers have a chance in the next three games to finish this treachery in a good note. If they do finish 5-1, it's a massive win. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it until I don't have to look at it.
No doubt, Joe. The great Greek philosopher Seneca once wrote that we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality, and that's.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. You're going to say something there. Go
ahead.
No,
I was gonna retort, but I didn't let you finish. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's true. That's true. We're hoping for 5-1, right? But the reality is that somewhere along the way they end up having some rock in their shoe that they just can't get rid of, or they end up stepping on a rake.
And one of those rakes that's metal, not plastic. Plastics are not bad. Being in the landscape business, trust me, there's a difference. I think when you know what your team is and you know what has to be done to get to where you're supposed to be with a roster like this, you're you're just not going to be very happy in the end. The Lakers, in order for the Lakers to have any shot at immortality for this season, there would have to be so many scenarios, lottery ticket type stuff, winning lottery ticket type stuff for them to make it. And we still don't even know if that would work because do they have the energy? Do they have the health to play in 4 road playoff games? And even before then, you still have to play likely 2 games to get in. And if you meet Denver instead of Oklahoma City or Minnesota, how does that play out? Likely not good. So there's so many difficult scenarios. It's just much easier to roll with the reality that this is not going to last very long. I think we're probably about 3 weeks away from probably ending the season. I hope I'm wrong, but the Lakers are going to have to go into this summer and this offseason and really understanding what needs to get done next. We know they're going to keep LeBron. I just don't see how they won't. But if they don't surround him with the correct talent, then this is basically a money grab, waste of time. People just watching LeBron play his last few years, doing whatever, and that's where I'm at. And I usually introduce my drink before I start, but I wanted to get into the game. I'm having my Tito's, folks, on the rocks. It's just much easier on the system. The red wine I had the other night was good, but not exactly the best stuff, but good nonetheless. But salute to everyone here. Sean, welcome back.
I got a Monster Energy drink, Joe.
Good.
Normally shouldn't drink caffeine at this late hour, but since I'm a guest on Nightcap, the best nightcap show on the internet, I figured I needed to go tete a tete with you. So
Well, I wanted to do everyone a favor, and I always try to. One of the benefits of playing on the East Coast on the road is we don't have to worry about the time problem. My shows usually start around 11 because the Laker games finish around 10. We got to let post game do its thing, and then I arrive on 11. But that means it's 2 o'clock where you're at, 2 o'clock in a lot of places, and sometimes 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in other places. But we still have a good crowd. We still do well. Tito's is a vodka Xbox. Tito's is a vodka here. So I was on a plane to San Francisco a year and almost 2 years ago, 2 years ago, 18 months ago. And I never drank on a plane before. I've flown a few times in my life. I never drank on a plane. I never felt like I needed to. But my buddy's with me and he goes, let's have a drink. It's an hour flight. Let's have a drink. So they made this Bloody Mary because we left early. They made this Bloody Mary, and I like Bloody Marys, but sometimes they're hit and misses. And they put Tito's with this really good, mix. And my God, I was like, damn, this is good. Like, I never Smirnoff and all those other vodkas that I've drank. I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. This is pretty damn good. So I ended up having a couple. Felt pretty good. Actually, got off the plane floating a little bit. I was feeling pretty good. So since then, I don't drink any other vodka than Tito's. I
so
just need to get.
was it more of a buzz, Joe, or is it the actual taste?
Here's the weird. Both. The taste was phenomenal. The the way my body absorbs alcohol is I get an initial buzz. It's kind of like how my friends who used to smoke would say the second they take that first drag of the cigarette, they're like, "Whew," like the nicotine goes all up in their heads, right?
Yes.
Same thing with me. I take that first shot of whatever, or a drink of a swig of a drink, or of the first beer, and right away, like my body's like, "Woo," it's like it gets primered, and then it starts to kind of just even out, slowly go up, slowly escalate, and it'll depend on how I feel about how I want to continue to drink quicker, take more shots, or have more beers.
It's
Um,
almost like a superpower, Joe. The molecules in your body understand that it needs to go to Joe's brain first before the liver.
it is. I believe it is. I actually, I'm 46, and I can honestly say I drink when I'm with friends. I drink. I drink a good amount, and I don't really get messed up. I don't really get messed up. So I don't know. I don't know why. Is it in reverse? I didn't really get messed up when I was younger either. So I don't know. I was told when, in my 20s not to eat spicy foods in my 40s because your body won't be able to handle it. I eat more spicy food now than I ever had in my life. So I don't know where these guys come from. I don't know if my system's different. I don't know. I don't really know.
It is. You have an iron gut.
Darren, thank you so much for the super chat. It is good to see Sean. I'm still talking to Sean almost on the daily. Sean uh, is likely going to slowly get back in here, and we're going to continue to talk more and more basketball. I know there's some of our people are wanting going to be talking about other things on Lakers fast break, but Xbox is here, so I don't know if I want to go into the Dodger thing yet. They are playing right now. I'm actually watching them. They're at the bottom of the sixth, and they're up 5-0. Teoscar has hit 2 home runs, has all the RBIs tonight. So you worry about Mookie Betts. I'm sorry. Mookie has a home run, so he has four RBIs. It's funny. You got somebody like Teoscar who's good when he's on, and you're sitting there worried about Mookie. You're sitting there worried about Freeman. You're worried about Otani. You're worried about Will Smith. You're worried about Muncy. You're worried about here's this guy
It's a
hitting
murderer's
two
row.
bangers, right? I don't know what these guys are gonna do. I really don't. Then Bobby Miller's pitching a gem. It's the regular season. I'm sorry to say, folks, I've seen enough 100-win seasons to last me a lifetime. I just haven't seen enough World Series wins for a lifetime. So whatever they do this year, I don't care what it is, make sure you win the last game of the year. You are really, really due. Dave Roberts, don't screw it up. And that's all I got to say on that. Um, Joe, I'm a Dodger fan now too, boss. Let's go. Thanks, Xbox. Again, I felt bad. It's the Lakers nightcap. I mean, that's what it is. I'll stick to the subject, but sometimes we got to throw in some of the LA stuff here. And football season comes, and the Olympics are going to come. We're going to be talking about other things too as well.
Well,
Johan B.
that's a
West.
Joe. That's kind of it's emblematic, kind of what we're talking about here. Is that hope and optimism are for organizations who have instability from top to bottom. Like there's an expectation that the Dodgers have, the Yankees have, the Braves have, the Cardinals most years that it's championship or bust. You contend or you bottom out, and usually you don't bottom out when you have organizational instability. Now you can have a bad year. Everybody does. Those happen. Injuries happen. Um, Days ex machina crap can happen. We saw it with what happened with Emma Udoka and the Celtics, uh, just as one example. But for the most part, organizations who have stability from top to bottom don't have to really look at hope and optimism. And unfortunately, that's where we are now as Laker fans. Um, the hope, you know, Red from Shawshank has one of the best quotes in cinematic history when he says, "Let me tell you something about hope. Hope can drive a man insane," and it's true. It's true. And as a sports fan, you kind of lean on that when your all logic has left your body, mind, and soul. And that's kind of where we are, unfortunately, with the Lakers. Is that there is profound organizational instability.
And that instability, its genesis comes from bad decisions. If they're not making bad decisions, then obviously they're doing well, right? We discussed a lot in the post game about the major flubs they had in the offseason and not picking the correct player in the first round, the second round player being pretty much as useless as the first, not bringing in a mid-level exception player that had a role throughout the year, and then to combine that with the fact that there were some questionable rotational decisions during times where we felt certain players should have gotten more minutes, because there was always that excuse, well, this person wasn't healthy, being, Rui Hachimura, but what about when he was healthy? Why didn't you start it then? What was the deal? It took him like 2 months to do that. And then there's dialogue going on with LeBron, which is not anything new. LeBron has a way of saying things that I'm just not very connected with. A lot of it is just hot air. We're preparing, we're strategizing, whatever it is that the word was. To me, if you're strategizing about getting a ninth seed, then you either are completely delusional or just plain dumb. I'm going to take a guess that LeBron's probably not a dumb guy, but he is full of shit sometimes. And being that I'm a Laker fan, I heard a lot of this kind of stuff with Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal had a habit of talking out of his ass and continues to, even to this day. And he's even admitted that he embellishes things. One of the examples there is the whole Kobe beef was some kind of marketing ploy. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, Shaq. So my thing is that when you're not playing to win a championship, they're thinking they're trying to, but I'm talking reality wise, they're not going to win the championship. It's just a matter
Because
of
yeah, because you're right, Joe. And you brought up a germane point during the post game when you were elaborating on the fact that, with all due respect to analysts out there, and I think just s- generalized sports fans, the next man up, that paradigm really only applies to football, as Joe eloquently stated. It's a 53-man roster. You can survive a season where your second best defensive tackle blows out his knee. You could survive a season if your middle linebacker has concussion problems and is unavailable. You could survive if if a couple corners get hurt. You can't survive if your QB1 is down. You can survive if your left tackle is down. There, so there are only like certain positions in that sport where if you're at a disadvantage, the season's down the tubes. You were right, Joe. In basketball, in baseball, in hockey, there's only, a 20-man, 15-man roster. So if you don't have the adequate depth and you can't complement that depth when an injury or two or something else happens, then you're SOL. You're SOL. That's just the nature of the business in those three sports. And you and Gerald, myself, John, Jamie, Laker Tom, our audience have all stated it throughout the year. They didn't make the correct moves. And when you make bad decisions, those decisions ultimately have ripple effects, like a pebble in a lake. That's just the nature of this game, this business.
and the the word now is, according to Johan Buha, is that how you say his name?
Hmm.
The Lakers are going to go all in on Mr. Trey Young. So I'm trying to think about this for a second. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but I think it's prudent to do that now at this point. Um, does does getting Trey Young make this team a title contender?
On the face value of it, no. It
And
makes
with
them better.
it
Now,
makes them better, right? Right. Because now you don't ever have to worry about not having someone on the court should LeBron sit. should AD sit. You have someone on the court that's always going to be a threat. And his defense has gotten a tad bit better this year, too, by the way. So if that's the case, then he's improved on top of the fact that he's an elite scorer. So let's say Trey Young gets thrown into this thing. How do the Lakers build around those three players? Can they get enough depth to sustain the three-star lineup? And why would Atlanta do that trade? For what? That's going to be the question here very, very soon, probably within the next 3 weeks. We're going to be talking a lot about that. Why would Trey Young work now in terms of Trey Young's game versus, or I should say, in conjunction with AD? I think that's the perfect complement, at least for the future too, because we're also thinking about Trey Young for the next 10 years. Trey Young has a game that will sustain itself for a very long time. Think Steph Curry. Steph Curry is going to be a 20-year type player. Why? Because he's a smaller guy. Yes, I know his ankles have had their issues, but it seems like they've pretty much been handled. He's a shooter, doesn't bang around too much. So we're looking at that trade not only for next year, but you're also solidifying your team with at least another star that's going to be here for a decade versus someone who probably will be here, LeBron James, for another few years at the most. So in that case, the Lakers could be making a good decision there because I don't know what else that could be out there. I don't think Donovan Mitchell would be an option. I just don't see Cleveland doing that trade with the Lakers in any way. I don't see how the stuff works. And if I'm him, I'd stay in Cleveland. You're building something there. They probably need just one more like a B plus player, and those guys are going to be a problem in the East. They could go to the finals here in the next year or so because I think the Celtics better win it this year. They better win it because they're going to have two supermax players on that team. It's basically going to be two perimeter players that play the same position and the merry minimums. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep Porzingis unless they want to really mess with the first and second aprons of the salary cap. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to discuss, a lot of stuff to consider. And to me, Sean, that's the thing that's got me worried more than anything. I've already conceded that the Lakers are not going to win. And I don't hate anybody in the West other than, of course, the Clippers, but they're not going to get to the finals.
I don't
Where
even think they get out of the first round if they play
we,
the Pelicans, Joe. I
I
think they're
agree.
going to get punked.
I agree. I think they finally hit a wall, which we all knew they would. They're done. They're going to be done likely. I don't really have any affiliation or any dislike against Denver. Mike Malone's kind of obnoxious, but I like Jamal Murray. I like Michael Porter Jr. I like Aaron Gordon. I like Jokic. They're pretty legit to me. I don't have any disdain for them.
They're blue collar.
They are. They are.
They're
They are.
lunch pail bunch. Yep.
Absolutely. So now the thought process is maintaining current status, which is the Celtics and the Lakers have 17 championships, and we cannot afford as Laker fans for them to pass the Lakers again. And if that happens this year, or I say not happen this year, there's a better chance that it won't likely happen, at least not with their current roster construction. And that's where I'm at on this. Uh, the other small problem that we discussed on post game, and I've talked about it before, is should the Lakers not get out of the play-in, they now become a lottery team. Do the New Orleans Hornets switch to this year because it's a lottery pick? I know the draft is being touted as one of the worst drafts in years, but do you risk that, Sean? I want to ask you this. If you're New Orleans and you're Mr. Griffin over there, do you still take a lottery pick in a bad draft versus risking waiting till next year where maybe you might get a much later pick for
That's a,
all you know?
that's a great question, Joe. Not being David Griffin, but I would say, if you, myself, or yourself, or any audience member we have, and we have some of the most intelligent ones out there, I think at this point in time, it's not contemplative at this point. You're not even thinking about it. I would say this: if New Orleans wins at least one round, I would consider it less of a possibility and more of an improbability that Griffin would switch and swap picks this year for next year because he's probably looking at it like this. I've got a team that's 17 games over 500 right now. I'm in the middle of the pack in the Western Conference. My team is still relatively young and they have room to grow. If I added a lottery pick, does that lottery pick, and like you said, it's a kind of a watered down draft this year. Does that lottery pick, is he so profoundly impactful that I would risk messing up my chemistry from this year? I would say no. I would kind of be on the side of nope, I'm just gonna wait this and see what the Lakers do in 2025 because for all intents and purposes, it's been, playing, playing, playing. That's kind of the theme. And I think Griffin might take the chance that, next year is kind of in the same boat, Joe. And if he swaps the pick next year and they're in a similar position, he's golden. He's golden because he's possibly one or two rounds in one year, and the next year his team is looked at as a contender, and he's adding a lottery pick to that team. So to me it's almost a wait and see approach with Griffin right now. But I would say right now, if I had to put a place a bet on it, I would bet that Griffin takes the future rather than the present, and he bets on himself and the Pelicans and waits it out for the Lakers and doesn't do the swap this year.
Makes sense. Folks, Sean, I need you to take over real quick. I am going to give me 60 seconds, Sean. Continue the show.
Absolutely.
I will be right back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's your host for the next 60 to 90 seconds, Magic Man, Sean Grice. Welcome into Lakers Nightcap. That's preeminently hosted by the incomparable Joe Soro. As we march on through the Nightcap, I'm going to have some more monster. I will say this. If the Lakers did somehow acquire a third star, and let's just, for the sake of argument, say it's Trey Young. So you're acquiring a shoot first guard with, you know, marginal defensive ability, diminutive size. But then again, defense is not at a premium in the NBA. So if you're going to acquire a player like that, it makes you better. Now, it is then up to management, and we're betting on Rob Palinka here again, to surround and construct a team that has enough complementary defense and shooting to help those three. Because ultimately, what Trey Young is able to do is he's a game wrecker when it comes to pick and roll basketball. And we know that Anthony Davis has never really played with a guard who's been able to game wreck off the pick and roll. He had Rondo for about half a year. Um, but if you put a guy with Trey Young's skills and AD's durability, if that's no longer a question, then you have cooking with peanut oil. Now the question is, you have Jared Vanderbilt under contract. You have Cam Reddish, who's a free agent. I don't want Cam Reddish back. I think we've had enough of the cardio broses here. Wish Cam Reddish well. He's probably going to get another contract somewhere else based on the level of play, but I just don't see it as a Laker. So Palinka then needs to be able to surround the Lakers with adequate defensive depth and shooting. And if that's the case, it's not going to be Gabe Vincent and JHS. So you're going to have to either trade one or two of those players and bring in somebody else who's an adequate backup guard for Trey Young, because at this point, Trey's got questionable durability, but it's more soft tissue injuries rather than he's dealing with serious ailments. So you have to calculate that into the equation. You also have to look at your perimeter defense right now, Joe. And if you still have LeBron James, you have a Jared Vanderbilt, you need to add something else in there. It's not as spicy as it should be, especially if you have a Trey Young and AD on the floor. Um, you need you need a backup center. Like you need a backup center that can rebound the hell out of the ball. You need a couple of other perimeter defenders that are just dogs, slobbering, gnarling dogs. You need some snarl, especially with Trey Young. And, that's really up to Palinka. And I got to be honest, like a lot of, I'm not a fan of his draft selections. I mean, me and Joe have talked about this kind of ad nauseum for the past 3 years. Um, all he does is watch Big Ten basketball, or that's all he puts on tape is watching Big Ten basketball. Does doesn't really consider any other conference, and that's an issue because a lot of the best players, as Joe has said, come from the SEC. They come from the ACC. They come from the Big East, and he doesn't look at any of those conferences. And I just question his intelligence at this point, Joe, in evaluating talent and how it would coordinate and complement what he already has.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation too, considering you have you have schools right now that are known for football, Clemson, Alabama, that are in the Elite Eight, and of course you have UConn, Big East. It
And
doesn't change.
Duke's just about to knock out Houston here.
It's the results are what they are. God, I feel like I repeat that almost daily. The
Well,
re-
and that's another interesting um, analogy there, Joe. Is that for when we were going through the Black Forest, that was the Lakers without Kobe Bryant and Powell and such, we were told, well, you got to focus on process more than the results, right? Process, process, process. Well, the process was like circular wind. It almost felt like it was a tornado that we were watching over and over again. It just didn't go anywhere. It was just a funnel of incompetence. And that matters because normally what happens is if the process is correct, the results follow. Look at the Rockets. The Rockets have been playing the best basketball in the NBA the past 7 weeks. Now, they were losing a little bit, but they were losing 113, 106, 114, 110. And then they started winning over and over again. And as Joe has said, winning and losing are both contagious. They are. There's something about getting on a heater and being able to sustain that level of impact and being able to summon up the kind of energy and focus that you need to at the end. And Joe's talked about how losing is contagious, how kind of heads drop, arms on the arms on the hips, right, Joe? You notice that a lot, especially if guys are tired. Like that's a weakness. That's a mental weakness when you see somebody who's got their hands on their hips. I remember Eddie George, who's probably like, and all due respect to Archie Griffin, who's the greatest running back in Ohio State history. Um, Eddie George was a man amongst men. Like this guy was 6'3", 240, but like he looked like a house, Joe. He really did. And I remember he would always watch the defense in the fourth quarter. And if they had their hands on their hips, he knew, I got him. I got him. And that's a fierceness that it's more innate than anything else. It's more of instinctual. Like, I'm just going to punish you over and over again. And I know that you're tired and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's what losing is. You've talked about that a lot.
I love that you brought that up, the looking at the hands on the waist, because the first two things I thought of was when you're not, and I don't want to rag on Pete Carroll any more than I have to, but he's a pretty calm guy. He's a great coach. Jim Harbaugh, great coaches. But I question on why they couldn't see the hands on the hips in their Super Bowls. I remember very, very vividly. You could see the Ravens. You could see them getting scared. But Jim Harbaugh was so focused on what he needed to do. And it's important for those out here listening. It's good to be focused, but you also have to still pay attention a little bit more around you. You know, I believe if Jim Harbaugh had really, really paid attention to body language of Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Suggs, and those guys, I think he would have made different play calls in those instances. And what was crazy about that is you had one of you had a play where your quarterback ran for over 200 yards. You had the waiting Super Bowl MVP that was destroying that defense towards the end. Why didn't you run an option? They're gonna have to commit to either Frank Gore or you, and either way, they're effed. You're
I,
right.
re- I remember when we played high school football, Joe, it was mandatory on our defense. You do not put your hands on your hips. Do not do it. If you're tired, go to the coach and tell him you're tired and sub out. But you do not put your hands on your goddamn hips
The
because
Niners, yeah, absolutely. The Niners had that Super Bowl one. Fast forward to Seattle against New England. That one was so obvious. We're all still wondering what was going on there. Okay.
yeah,
The Patriots had quit. It was over. They knew Marshawn was going to get that ball. They may have prepared for the slant, but they were actually waiting for Marshawn Lynch to score a touchdown. Folks, don't overthink. Pay attention to the room. This is part of the important things in life, too. Pay attention to the room. Pay attention to where you're at. This is about your life in the real world. This is not about a football game. When you go into a room, when you go into an area, when you start looking around and paying attention, you watch how people look. You watch how their mannerisms are. You watch how their speech is. The key in life for prosperity is knowing where not to be. It's not knowing where you're going and what you want to do. No, it's knowing where not to be. And when you're not in the wrong place, you're usually in the right place. And when you're in the right place, you can do things you want to do. You can pay attention to the details. But when you're dealing with stuff around you that's not good, bad things usually happen. And in sports, it's different. There's no consequences. It's a game, really. But in real life, it's important. And he actually practiced against that slant. Yeah, they did. They did. Seattle thought New England was going to take a time on. They didn't. Should have ran the ball with Marshawn. They prepared for that play, and Pete Carroll basically handed it to him, and he didn't have to. Pete Carroll made two play calls in his football career. This is how close it is in sports. That would have made him one of the all-time greats if he makes those two plays. Instead, both those plays went the wrong way, and he's looked on as a very good coach. Yes, Super Bowl coach. Yes, a two-time NCAA national championship coach. But he would have had back-to-back championships against Manning and Brady in an era where they dominated. Well, Manning didn't dominate, but he was, Manning. And he would have been the only team to ever three-peat in college football history.
Yeah, no doubt, Joe. I mean, that he would be looked at as a great. You beat the most cerebral quarterback that ever played, and you beat the greatest winner at the QB position that ever played back to back. That's a great point. And yeah, that call that he made, and again, all due respect, he's a great coach, but Pete Carroll is a better coach than Mac Brown, and he let Mac Brown punk him in that championship game.
Yes, and if you're wondering why we're talking about Pete Carroll and football and Jim Harbaugh and football, it coincides with our discussion in terms of understanding what's going on around you. If we're going to correlate it with the Lakers and Rob Pelinka and his inability to not get out of that tunnel vision of the Big Ten, whatever it is.
Because you can't, and Joe didn't say it, but he's in a roundabout way saying it, is that you can't separate the body from the mind. Winners don't do that. It's we're linked. We're linked. The body and the mind are one, and it's focus. And like Joe was saying, being able to read a room, read what's going around you. It's observable. You can't miss the signs, right? So what Bobby D said in Silver Linings Playbook when he's talking to Pat Jr. You gotta pay attention to the signs. It's a sin if you don't pay attention to the signs. He's
It's
right.
important. There's an incident with one of my favorite comics. He's kind of burnt his bridges everywhere he's gone, which is Aries Spears.
Mm,
He's ridiculously talented, but he's got an attitude problem. I don't think it's an attitude problem, but the industry does. It wouldn't bother me. I could totally, if I was a producer, I'd hire him because there's too much talent there, and I could deal with it because I'm kind of weird like that. But he was in a radio studio with some guy he really angered, and you could see the guy about to pop. And I've always taught people to watch out for that. If you see someone that's finally getting into the red, it's starting to show 9 RPMs. Stop, take a breath, relax. You can be a hothead. You can get into a conversation, but then you got to drop the level down. You got to drop it. You got to go. Okay, we got what we needed to get out. Yes, we're men. We have testosterone. One of the benefits of being a man in those situations is usually those things always end up with both parties having a beer and laughing about it. At least that's how it's been with me in my life. And that's how it should be. It should be, we have an issue, we do what we need to do, we get it done, and then that's it. Okay? Yeah, we're going to argue about something else later, but who cares? Okay? It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Life's too short. So I can correlate it with the Lakers. Because when you start looking at the big picture here, Lakers have given us a lot. We have sworn them up and down. We have, in a lot of ways, disrespected Jeannie by saying bad things to her, bad things to Darvin Ham, bad things to Rob Pelinka. And it's childish sometimes, but you get into your emotions sometimes, and it is what it is. You're frustrated. Why are you picking these players that are not going to help this team? Why are you not assembling the right depth? Why are you putting your head on somebody's shoulders? Why is LeBron talking about strategy when you're a goddamn 9th seed? Like, it plays with your mind. It plays with your common sense. Some people can deal with it. Some people can just go with the flow and just retain the bull crap, but I can't. If I know you're full of crap, I have to let you know.
Yeah, because eventually, Joe, that this whole idea of giving someone the benefit of the doubt is BS. You can't generalize or umbrella uh, an intelligent person in every um, facet with, well, they're really smart and they've shown their mettle in the past, and so we need to give them the benefit of the doubt. No, no. Each individual is, it's what Tony Soprano said. Bobby, you're a good guy, but each man is measured on his own merit, and every situation calls for merit. And like you said, Joe, can't give somebody the benefit of the doubt all the time. You can't do it. It's not possible. It's not logical.
And we'll talk about tonight's game, right? Tonight's game didn't have a lot of angst, wasn't disappointed really. It
Nope.
was expected because of a particular schedule that we knew was going to be a problem.
Mhm.
The only surprise was I was surprised at how poorly Indiana was on offense. And I thought, damn, if they had just mustered up a little bit more energy, they might have had a chance to take this game. And that's kind of a bummer. But in the end, they were tired. They came back in the Milwaukee game. They obviously blew out Memphis, which is good. Uh, they were they had won 5 in a row. This was supposed to be somewhat of a scheduled loss. I just didn't know it was going to be like this. I thought it'd be a straight up blowout.
So did I. Especially like you said, especially coming off that emotional win in a hostile barn, Joe. You would figure they go into Indiana's barn and just get the doors blown off them.
Yeah, and they can exceed what I was hoping for, which was a 4-2 road trip by winning the next 3 games against a team that's in the negative 86 together in terms of the records. However, if one slips, they end up 4-2, kind of par for the course for this season. It still somewhat would be a win on a such a late, rigorous 6-game road trip. But then things are going to get interesting here if Houston and Golden State start to win. They're going to play 3 very difficult teams. They're going to play Cleveland, Minnesota, and Golden State's going to be difficult because they're trying to play for a spot as well.
And Golden State and Houston play each other one more time.
There's going to be a I think that Golden State game is going to tell us where they're going to be. I'm predicting that. That's what's going to tell them all if they're going to solidify a 9th seed, they're going to solidify a 10th seed, or they might get jacked, which is kind of scary. To go through all this and all this LeBron strategy and only to not make the play-in on top of it, now things are getting scary because they're all separated by 1 game. All that needs to change is one of those teams to go 3-0 while the Lakers go, I guess, 1-3, something like that, for 4 games. So that's the reality of that, and then it's going to be. I'm not nervous about it, but I'm kind of keeping my eye on it. I'm kind of keeping on. I'm getting my mind ready for it should it happen.
Mhm.
What do you do then? How do you justify the season at that point? It is a complete waste at that point, and there's nothing to do but blow this thing up. And is it blowing it up to get Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell? Is there some mystery star that's going to demand a trade in the summer? Those are all going to be questions we're going to be asking ourselves here because the offseason is going to be a long one, Sean. It's going to be a long one if this is done in 3 weeks. We're talking about We're talking about, let's say, the third week of April, May, June, July, August, September until October. That's 6 months where the Lakers, not counting summer league, I don't really count those. 6 months where we're not going to have any Laker basketball, and
Mhm.
we're going to be drained out of our minds. That's what's at stake here if these guys don't figure something out, or if they face Denver in the first round, something like that.
Well, and Joe, let me ask you this then, because normally, and I've seen it in the past, and basically everybody has, but I'm just kind of I rem I've got a memory I can't really understand. I remember so many different things. Normally, what happens if a season goes down the crapper? Normally, what a sound GM will do, and I'm talking about Patrick Riley, RC Buford, we'll even go to Bob Myers. Normally, what they do is, Joe, at the end of the year, and we go to football too. You could do with Pioli or do with Tomlin. Normally, what they do is at the end of the year, they'll let the media blow their load. They'll spend like 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half. Just let them ask every single question that's on their mind at the time. And then they'll just go quiet. They'll go zero dark 30 for the rest of the off season and they'll regroup. I'm wondering, do you think Palinka would pull that kind of strategy? Or is he the kind of guy that we know him to be, that snake oil salesman that he's going to give the platitudes and the paradigms about continuity and injuries played a part, and Darvin Ham's still our guy, and it'll be a 25-minute, and then he'll go off and I don't know, go to Connecticut or have a Negroni in Portugal with his family and just not think about things.
I believe the latter.
Mm,
It's status quo. There's no punishment. There's no criticism, except in the dark or on shows like us who haven't reached that big of an audience to make an impact yet, or haven't that we don't have the sound wave yet to resonate. There used to be the TJ Simers, the J.A. Adondes, the LA Times guys. Orange County Registry, usually, I never really heard a lot of stuff coming out of there. I'm sure there was, but it usually was coming from LA Times. Clash
yeah,
E, those guys were more critical. But you know what
Howard
sucks?
Beck, yeah,
You know what sucks about those guys though too? They were critical in a stupid way. Even like J.A. Adonde used to dislike Kobe. It used to piss me off. Like, what are you doing? If you criticize a player after a game where he messed up, that's one thing. But to continue to just criticize, now your criticism doesn't turn into criticism. That's why I try to explain to people with this LeBron thing. I am happy LeBron is a Laker. I want to put that on record. It's a hell of a lot better than having what we had before that. Understand that. It's very important that you all understand that. I'd rather have LeBron James as a Laker. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to criticize him when he says things that don't sound correct.
that sounds fair.
Because it he is, you want to be the greatest of all time. You said it. I didn't say it. You want to be this conglomerate. I'm the $1 billion this. I have 40 million people following me. You're the leader then. When the leader is making statements or observations that aren't true, they need to be called out. You're the leader. I'm not going to go call out uh, JHS, he's not the leader of the Lakers. Am I going to call out Anthony Davis? Every time Anthony Davis says something, it sounds logical because that's how he thinks. We all want Anthony Davis to kind of have that pit bull mentality, but he doesn't. He goes with the flow, and he's smart about it. That's how he works. Like Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol was the same way. They're both great players. They're both champions. I'm not expecting anyone to be somebody that they're not. I'm not going to harp on it, and I'm not going to sit there and say he should be this. No, that's not how it works. LeBron has said that I'm the man. I'm the greatest. Now, we know he's advanced in age. We get that. But that doesn't mean he's advanced here in a sense of you're not going senile. You're a young man in this area. Matter of fact, this should be better the older you get. Yet I'm still hearing things that don't make sense, like strategy about being a ninth seed. It doesn't make any sense. It's the excuse and it's the hot air coming out of rear ends that has played a part in why this team is where it is. Because if you had strategized, prepared, figured, whatever the word you want to use, you would have taken care of business in December.
And I just want to say, I just want this on the record. This just shows how full of shit somebody like JJ Redick really is, and how him and LeBron having this podcast is really flawed. Because a lot of people thought that, oh, well, two great minds coming together and shooting the breeze about the vicissitudes and the ins and outs of the NBA. Well, if JJ Redick was willing to call out the access media, which he's a part of, why wouldn't he call out LeBron for that exact thing, Joe? Like, why would you say you're strategizing for a play-in? Like, what's help me understand the calculus in that, right? But instead, what they do is he's going to sit back and he's going to placate and be complacent to LeBron at the altar of LeBron, because this whole thing is just based on narratives, Joe. I go back to that quote, and you love it too, when John Ford talked about when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. It's the same thing with a narrative. When the narrative becomes fact, print the narrative. It's more about, we live in a narrative society. We don't live in a truthful society right now.
It's true. There's an interesting dynamic that when you bring that up, I think of Ric Flair, and one of the best 30 for 30s is the story of Ric Flair. And Shawn Michaels, the great Shawn Michaels, is being interviewed on one of the skits there, and he says Ric Flair's real name is Richard Fleer, and Ric Flair has never really ever really gotten to know who that guy is, because Ric Flair is not the real guy. The real guy is Richard Fleer. He's the guy that has Social Security, Richard Flair. That's what his kids' names are.
Ric Flair is the mask of Richard Fleer.
Right, right. And but to the audience, to the facade, we are going to print Ric Flair. And that's okay if that's all you have, which is, in a lot of ways, that's all he has. He wasn't a family man. He wasn't a good husband. So we print the legend at that point, and we are the observers of Ric Flair. We are not involved in that other side, the real side of things. So it just depends on who's watching. His ex-wives, his children don't care about Ric Flair. They care about the real guy. We care about Ric Flair. And I think a lot of people care about LeBron James the bullshit artist. JJ Redick reminds me a lot of Dan Orlovsky. Jesus, I can't even pronounce his name. Orlovsky, ESPN analyst, former Detroit Lion quarterback who ran like 10 yards behind the end zone, not knowing where he was. Because they have this like delivery of they
I'm
might not be,
suave. I'm
yeah,
suave.
I'm suave and I'm gonna be direct, right? And they are. I'm not saying they're lying or they're putting like an act, but at the same time, I'm like, it doesn't look right with you guys. And the fact that Reddit called Jerry West's generation a bunch of plumbers, I thought that was kind of funny because it's still basketball. Yeah, it's not football. Like I get there were football players in the 60s that were 5'11, 220 playing middle linebacker versus guys now that could be 6 feet, 240 that could run like deers, right? I get that part, but it's still basketball. Elgin Baylor was jumping in the air like Dr. J and all those guys, right?
Mhm.
Will Chamberlain was doing what he was doing. He would have translated very well. It just wasn't a lot of those guys, but they were there. But it comes down to the audience. The audience wants the fantasy. The audience wants to see Ric Flair. They want to see LeBron James be this guy that's sounds like he knows what he's talking about because he's LeBron James and you like the way he plays. As much as I loved Kobe, as much as I love Magic, okay, I'm going to use Magic as a perfect example because I've actually met Magic and he's real. That's Magic. I saw it in his eyes. I saw it in his smile. Okay. Just because I love Magic and I'll always love Magic and I'll always support Magic. Are you going to tell me that what he did when he quit was good? It was like he ratted on the family. He went into witness protection type mode, right? I'm gonna I'm gonna be an informant. He could have just retired and said, I don't have time for this. Or the fact that he was talking about how he wanted to help Ben Simmons, which I remember reading going, Magic, do you know the rules about tampering? And Magic's supposed to be this business mogul guy. But then I get hints of things sometimes where I'm like, what was going on when you were thinking about that? So making mistakes versus habitual dialogue. Mistakes versus bad decisions. Two different things. I used an extreme example one time. One was because I thought it was funny with how athletes run their lifestyles. If you tell me you made a mistake and you have a chick on the side that you've been taking care of, that you've been dressing up, getting her whatever she wants for like 5 years, and then get caught, and then you tell me that it was a mistake, I'm going to call BS and I'm going to laugh in your face. If you go to a party, get a little tipsy, make a bad mistake, you never knew the person, it was one of those things that happened. Okay, we're human. I get it. One of my favorite shows I remember, I'm gonna surprise a lot of you, Sex and the City. One of my favorite shows. Samantha Jones, strong woman in that show, a little rambunctious, but deep down there was power there that isn't typical in that world, in that way of thinking. But she said something like, anyone can have a slip. And that could be used for anything. And we're human beings. You have to understand anything, anybody can have a slip. Difference between bad decisions and mistakes. There's a huge difference. And right now, the Lakers keep making making bad decisions on every angle. Now, are they going to make up for it here? We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but are they going to make up for it here in the next 3 to 4 months? If they end up getting a Trae Young and they surround those guys with depth from the lower bowels this time versus not getting anything out of that bag, meaning the draft, meaning getting somebody for the mid-level exception, then you're going to put yourself in a position where you're still putting all the pressure on just 2 or 3 guys. And that's the way it is at this point. And again, Sean, I want to thank you for joining me here tonight for the early Lakers nightcap. The plan will be to obviously continue to do the nightcap here as long as the season's going on. Sean, I wouldn't mind having you on every show if that's something that'll work for you. I think we can put something together here where it'll definitely work. For those of you out there, if you have any comments, any questions, please email us at LakersFastBreak@yahoo.com. If you want to reach me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell they call it, it's Joe Soro LFB. If you want to reach me on Instagram, it's SinBlades_turf. And of course, if you want to reach me on Facebook, it's Johnny Blade with the Punisher logo. You can DM me, you can instant message me, whatever. And I'll answer any questions. Just nothing weird, please. I don't do weird. I don't answer. Until then, thanks again, Sean. Thank you all for listening. Have a great evening. Until next time, I'll see you next time.